Everyone always said I had the perfect family. They were right about the perfect part, perfectly designed to destroy me. My name is Patricia Williams, and for 32 years, I believed I was the problem. I believed I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough to deserve the same love my brother Michael received. What I didn't know was that I was funding my own emotional execution. It started so subtly that I didn't even notice. Picture this: a beautiful colonial house in suburban Connecticut, white picket fence, manicured lawn, the whole American dream package. Inside, family photos lined the hallway, dozens of them. Michael in his high school football uniform, Michael at graduation, Michael receiving awards. And there I was, always in the background, always slightly out of focus, like I was photobombed in my own family pictures. Dinner conversations followed the same script every night. "So, Michael, how was your day?" Dad would ask, genuine interest lighting up his eyes. Michael would launch into stories about his latest artistic project, his vision for changing the world through photography. Mom hung on every word like he was delivering the Sermon on the Mount. When they finally turned to me, if they turned to me, it was always an afterthought. "Patricia, you're quiet tonight. Everything okay at work?" Before I could answer, they'd already moved on to discussing Michael's next exhibition or the new camera equipment he needed. I remember my 25th birthday like it was yesterday. Michael got a brand new Honda Civic, silver, exactly what he'd been wanting. The whole family gathered around as he hugged Mom and Dad, tears in his eyes. "This changes everything," he said. "Now I can travel for my photography, really pursue my passion." For my birthday 3 months later, I got a gift card to Barnes & Noble and a motivational book about finding your purpose. The message was clear. Michael had already found his. I was still searching. But here's what's insidious about golden child dynamics. You don't realize you're being conditioned. Every comparison felt normal. "Why can't you be more like Michael?" Wasn't cruelty in my mind. It was just Mom wanting the best for me. Michael would have figured this out by now. Wasn't Dad being unfair. It was constructive criticism. If only you had Michael's drive wasn't emotional abuse. It was motivation. I internalized every comment, twisted every slight into self-improvement goals. I worked harder, achieved more, hoping that one day I'd finally be enough. College was my escape, or so I thought. I threw myself into accounting, graduated summa cum laude, landed a job at a prestigious firm in Manhattan. Finally, I thought. Finally, I'll make them proud. I called home with the news, breathless with excitement. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, distracted. "Oh, did we tell you? Michael just got selected for a gallery showing in Soho. Isn't that amazing? We're so proud." My promotion to senior accountant at 26 warranted a good for you. Michael's coffee shop photography series warranted a family celebration. The financial requests started innocently enough. I'd been working for 2 years, living in a tiny studio apartment, saving every penny. Michael called one Tuesday evening, voice tight with stress. "Patricia, I hate to ask, but could you help Mom and Dad with the mortgage this month? Dad's hours got cut, and they're really struggling. Just $800 and I'll pay you back as soon as my photography starts selling." How could I say no? Family helps family, right? $800 became the monthly norm. Then Mom's car needed repairs. $1,200. Dad's medical bills from his diabetes medication. Another $600. Michael's art supplies for a big exhibition. $400. I told myself it was temporary, that I was investing in my family's future. When Michael's photography finally took off, when Dad's hours increased, when things got back to normal, they'd remember how I stepped up. They'd finally see me as the good daughter I'd always tried to be. But Michael's photography never quite took off. There was always another exhibition that would be the big break, another contact who was interested in his work, another opportunity that required just a little more funding. Meanwhile, I was promoted to senior analyst, then to management. My salary grew, and somehow the family's financial needs grew with it. It became expected. Not requested, expected. "Patricia handles the bills now," Dad would tell relatives. "She's so good with money." Not Patricia is generous or Patricia is helping us out. I was simply the one who handled bills like it was my job, my responsibility. Michael was the artist, the dreamer, the one with potential. I was the accountant, the provider, the one who kept the lights on so Michael could chase his dreams. The gaslighting was surgical in its precision. When I mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the financial burden, Mom would sigh deeply. I know it's hard, honey, but family takes care of family. This is just temporary until Michael gets established. When I suggested Michael get a part-time job to help, Dad would bristle. You want to kill his creativity with some dead-end job? He's an artist, Patricia. He can't just punch a time clock like you do. When I pointed out that I'd been supporting them for 3 years, they'd exchange those looks, the ones that said I was being dramatic, ungrateful, materialistic. Christmas dinners became elaborate productions of my own invisibility. The table would be set beautifully, Mom's best china gleaming under the chandelier I helped pay for. Michael would arrive with his latest girlfriend, regaling everyone with stories of gallery openings and artistic insights. I'd sit there, writing mental checks for the meal's cost, the wine I'd purchased, the gifts under the tree that my credit card had bought. But the conversation flowed around me like I was furniture. Michael's work is getting so much attention, Mom would beam. Tell them about the review in that arts magazine, honey. Michael would modestly recount his latest minor success, while I calculated how much my monthly contributions had enabled this lifestyle. $4,000 a month by year 4. $48,000 a year, for a family that treated me like a living, breathing ATM. The shift was so gradual I almost missed it. Somewhere between year 5 and year 6, I stopped being their daughter and became their financial solution. They'd call when bills were due, when emergencies arose, when Michael needed funding for his next project. But they wouldn't call to ask how I was doing, whether I was happy, if I needed anything. The only time my phone rang with Mom or Dad on the caller ID was when they needed money. I started keeping track, partly for tax purposes, partly because the numbers were becoming staggering. Mortgage payments, $2,100 a month. Utilities and insurance, $600 a month. Groceries and household expenses, $800 a month. Michael's art fund, anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month depending on his latest opportunity. Medical expenses, car repairs, home maintenance, it all flowed through my bank account like I was running a charity organization. The worst part wasn't the money, though. The worst part was the constant reminder that none of it mattered. No matter how much I provided, how many emergencies I solved, how much stability I brought to their lives, I was still the disappointing daughter. At family gatherings, relatives would praise Michael's artistic vision while I sat there knowing I was the one funding it. When neighbors complimented the house improvements, Mom and Dad would beam with pride while I mentally calculated my contribution to the new roof, the updated kitchen, the landscaping. By year 7, I was essentially running a second household while living in my cramped apartment. I'd drive 40 minutes to their beautiful suburban home, the one I was paying for, and listen to them worry about Michael's future while ignoring my present completely. I'd sit in their remodeled living room, the renovation I'd funded, and hear about how proud they were of Michael's independence while they treated me like a walking wallet. The breaking point came on a December evening that started like any other family dinner. I'd worked a 12-hour day, traffic had been brutal, and I was exhausted. But it was Mom's birthday, so I'd stopped to pick up her favorite cake and a gift I couldn't really afford after sending my usual $4,000 that month. I walked into the warm, beautifully decorated house, every comfort paid for by my salary, expecting at least acknowledgement of the effort. Instead, I found Michael and our parents huddled around the kitchen island, excitement crackling in the air. "Patricia!" Mom called out, but her attention immediately returned to Michael. "You have to hear about Michael's incredible opportunity." My heart sank. I knew that tone. I knew what was coming. Michael's eyes were bright with possibility as he explained his latest venture. "There's this startup, an art tech fusion company. They're looking for photographers to create NFT collections, and they want me to be their featured artist. But I need $10,000 to buy into the partnership. It's a guaranteed return, Patricia. This could finally be it, my big break." The room fell silent as 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. Not to ask for my opinion, not to include me in the discussion, but to gauge my willingness to fund Michael's dreams yet again. After 7 years of this pattern, after pouring over $300,000 into their lifestyle, after sacrificing my own dreams for Michael's artistic pursuits, they were asking for more. "I need to think about it," I said quietly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dad's face darkened. "Think about what? This is family, Patricia. This is your brother's future we're talking about." Mom joined in, her voice taking on that hurt, disappointed tone I knew so well. "I don't understand why you're being so selfish. Michael has real talent, real potential. This could change everything for him." Something cracked inside me, not broke, but cracked like ice before it shatters. "What about my potential?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What about my dreams? My future?" The look that passed between my parents was one I'd seen countless times but never truly understood until that moment. It was the look of people who had never, not once, considered that I might have dreams worth funding. Michael shifted uncomfortably, but his discomfort was nothing compared to the devastation washing over me. "Patricia," Mom said in that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years, "you have a good job, a stable life. You don't need help like Michael does. He's an artist. He needs support to reach his potential." That's when Dad delivered the words that would change everything. "You'll never be as good as your brother anyway. Michael has something special. You're just practical." The room spun. 32 years of feeling inadequate suddenly made perfect sense. It wasn't that I'd failed to measure up. It was that I'd never been given the chance to succeed in their eyes. Michael was the golden child, the chosen one, the investment worth making. I was the bank, the safety net, the reliable daughter who would always be there to clean up the messes and pay the bills. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking, not with sadness, but with a clarity so sharp it cut through decades of conditioning. Every birthday forgotten in favor of Michael's achievements. Every accomplishment dismissed because it wasn't as creative as Michael's pursuits. Every dollar I'd transferred while living paycheck to paycheck so they could maintain their comfortable lifestyle. Every family dinner where I felt like a guest in a home I was paying for. "You're right," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "I'll never be as good as Michael at being supported by other people's money, but you know what? I'm done trying." I picked up my purse, leaving the birthday cake on the counter, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear confused murmurs, Michael calling my name, Mom asking where I was going. I turned back once, looking at the family I'd spent 7 years financially supporting, emotionally serving, and desperately trying to please. "Then tell him to pay all the bills," I said, my voice carrying a strength I didn't know I possessed. "I'm not sending money anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face went white, then flushed red. "What money?" she sputtered. "We never received a single dollar from you." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Then I realized what had happened, what had been happening all along. The money I'd been sending to help my family had been going somewhere else entirely, and as the pieces fell into place, I understood that this betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. But that's a conversation for tomorrow. Tonight, I walked out of that house, the house I'd been paying for, and drove home to my cramped apartment, finally understanding that I'd been funding my own emotional destruction for 7 years. The golden child and his enablers were about to learn what happened when the bank decided to close. I sat in my car outside their house for 2 hours that night, staring at the warm glow spilling from windows I'd helped keep bright. My hands gripped the steering wheel as the full weight of Mom's words echoed in my mind. "We never received a single dollar from you. 7 years, $320,000, and they claimed they'd never received any money from me." The drive home was a blur of streetlights and sudden clarity. I pulled into my apartment complex, the cramped space I'd accepted because family comes first, and immediately opened my laptop. Bank statements dating back 7 years, every transaction meticulously recorded. Wire transfers to Michael Williams Emergency Fund. Direct deposits to Family Support Account. Cashier's checks made out to my parents for mortgage payments. The evidence was overwhelming and damning, but it wasn't just the money. As I scrolled through years of financial records, patterns emerged that made my stomach turn. The transfers to Michael's account always preceded his social media posts about new opportunities and artistic investments. The emergency funds I'd sent for Dad's medical bills coincided with Michael's Instagram stories from expensive restaurants. The mortgage payments I'd been making matched up perfectly with home improvement projects that Michael had claimed credit for funding. I'd been supporting Michael's lifestyle while he took credit for providing for our parents. Every family gathering where relatives praised his generosity, every conversation where Mom bragged about how well Michael was doing financially, every moment I'd felt guilty for not contributing enough. It had all been built on money I'd earned through 60-hour work weeks and sacrificed dreams. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick when I wasn't actually sick. I needed time to process, to understand what had really been happening. I spent hours researching family dynamics, narcissistic patterns, golden child syndrome. Terms I'd never heard before suddenly described my entire childhood with surgical precision. The scapegoat, the invisible child, the family ATM. I discovered online communities of people sharing eerily similar stories, daughters who'd funded their brothers' dreams while being told they weren't ambitious enough, sons who'd supported entire families while being criticized for not achieving more. The validation was overwhelming. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't ungrateful, and I wasn't alone. But validation wasn't enough. I needed proof, and I needed a plan. I opened a new bank account that week, one that my family couldn't access or monitor. I redirected my direct deposit and canceled every automatic transfer that had been bleeding my finances dry for 7 years. The simple act of stopping the financial flow felt like taking my first real breath in decades. Then I did something that terrified and empowered me in equal measure. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of Michael's social media posts showing expensive purchases that coincided with my emergency transfers. Copies of bank statements highlighting the discrepancy between what I'd sent and what my parents claimed to receive. Text messages where Michael had promised to pay me back for loans that had never been repaid. The evidence painted a picture of systematic financial abuse masked as family loyalty. Michael had been intercepting money meant for our parents, using it to fund his lifestyle while allowing them to believe he was the generous son taking care of them. Meanwhile, I'd been working myself into exhaustion, living below my means, and accepting emotional crumbs while funding the very dynamic that kept me marginalized. 3 weeks passed before my phone started ringing. First Dad, wondering why the mortgage payment was late. Then Mom, confused about why their account seemed to be short. Finally, Michael, his voice tight with panic, asking if I was having financial problems and couldn't send my usual contribution. I let every call go to voicemail. Each message revealed more desperation, more confusion, more evidence that they'd built their entire financial stability on my contributions while simultaneously denying my importance. Dad's voicemail. Patricia, there must be some mistake with the bank. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Mom's message. Honey, we're really worried about you. You haven't sent the household money, and we don't understand what's happening. But it was Michael's messages that revealed the truth. His first voicemail was casual. Hey sis, just checking in. Did you forget about this month's transfer? By the third message, panic had crept in. Patricia, I really need to talk to you. There's been a misunderstanding about some financial arrangements. By the fifth message, he was begging. Please call me back. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. It was exactly what I thought. 2 months after I'd stopped the money flow, I agreed to meet them. Not at their house, the house I'd been paying for, but at a neutral location. A family restaurant where they couldn't control the environment or make a scene. I arrived early, spreading bank statements across the table like a prosecutor preparing for trial. When they walked in, the change was visible. Dad looked older, stress lines etched deeper around his eyes. Mom seemed frazzled, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. But it was Michael who showed the most dramatic change. The confident artist persona had cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. Patricia, Mom began, reaching across the table. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you been returning our calls?" I opened the folder of bank statements. "I've been busy calculating how much money I've sent to this family over the past 7 years. Their faces paled as I spread out months of evidence. $320,000. That's what I've contributed to keep this family afloat while working 60-hour weeks and living in a studio apartment." Dad sputtered. "But honey, we never asked you to—" "You never asked because Michael was collecting the checks," I interrupted, my voice steady with 7 years of suppressed anger. "Every mortgage payment I made, every emergency fund I provided, every bill I covered, it all went through Michael. And apparently, very little of it made it to you." The silence was deafening. Michael's face had gone white, his artistic confidence replaced by the look of a man whose house of cards was collapsing. Mom's eyes darted between the bank statements and her golden child, confusion and dawning realization warring across her features. "That's not—" Michael started, but I cut him off. "Really? Because I have Instagram screenshots of you in Europe last month. The same month I sent an emergency $5,000 for Dad's medical bills. Want to explain how that worked?" The confrontation that followed was 7 years in the making. Michael's elaborate justifications, Mom's desperate attempts to defend the golden child, Dad's shocked silence as he realized how much money had flowed through their family without his knowledge, and me, finally speaking truths I'd been swallowing for decades. "You told me I'd never be as good as Michael," I said, my voice cutting through their excuses. "And you were right. I'll never be as good as Michael at manipulating my family for money. I'll never be as good as Michael at taking credit for other people's sacrifices. And I'll never be as good as Michael at lying to the people who love me." The restaurant had grown quiet around us, other diners pretending not to watch the family drama unfolding. But I was past caring about appearances, past protecting their comfort, past being the accommodating daughter who suffered in silence. "But you know what I am good at?" I continued, gathering my bank statements. "I'm good at my job. I'm good at managing money, and I'm really good at setting boundaries. So here's what's going to happen. Michael is going to get a real job and start supporting this family the way I have for 7 years. You're going to figure out how to live within your actual means instead of my subsidies. And I'm going to start living my life instead of funding yours." I stood up, leaving them sitting in stunned silence with the evidence of their betrayal spread across the table. "When you're ready to treat me like a daughter instead of a bank account, you know my number. Until then, ask your artistic genius to figure out how to pay the bills with his talent." The months that followed were a masterclass in natural consequences. Without my financial support, the carefully constructed facade of their comfortable lifestyle began to crumble. The house went into foreclosure after 3 months of missed payments. Michael's art fund dried up, and with it, his stream of gallery submissions and artistic pursuits. Dad's retirement became impossible without my contributions to their savings. Mom had to return to work for the first time in 15 years. But the most dramatic change was in Michael himself. Stripped of his financial safety net, the entitled artist persona evaporated. He took a job at a marketing agency, trading his artistic dreams for a steady paycheck. The gallery openings stopped. The Instagram posts about creative pursuits disappeared. The confident speeches about artistic vision gave way to the reality of 40-hour work weeks and actual responsibility. Meanwhile, I was experiencing freedom for the first time in my adult life. With an extra $4,000 a month, I moved to a beautiful apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. I started traveling, something I'd put off for years while funding Michael's adventures. I invested in my retirement, took up photography as a hobby, and dated without the constant stress of supporting an entire family. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was finally able to pursue creative interests now that I wasn't funding Michael's artistic dreams. 6 months after the restaurant confrontation, Dad called. His voice was different, humbler, more genuine than I'd heard in years. "Patricia, could we talk?" Really talk. Not about money or problems, just talk. When I arrived at their modest apartment, they'd downsized dramatically after losing the house. I found a family I barely recognized. Without the financial cushion I'd provided, they'd been forced to confront some hard truths about their dynamics and priorities. Mom had started therapy, something she'd previously dismissed as unnecessary. Dad was working part-time to help make ends meet, his pride tempered by necessity. And Michael looked like he'd aged 5 years in 6 months, the stress of actual responsibility etched across his features. "We owe you an apology," Dad said simply. "More than an apology. We owe you acknowledgement of what you sacrificed for this family and how badly we treated you in return." Mom's eyes were red with tears she'd clearly been holding back. "I thought I was protecting Michael, nurturing his gifts. I didn't realize I was enabling him to take advantage of you. I didn't realize how much you were giving up for us." But it was Michael's apology that surprised me most. Gone was the defensive artist, the entitled golden child who'd never had to face consequences. In his place sat a man who looked genuinely broken by the weight of his actions. "Patricia, I told myself I was borrowing the money, that I'd pay it back when my photography took off. But the truth is, I got addicted to the lifestyle your money provided. I started believing my own hype about being the artistic genius while you were the practical one. I convinced myself you didn't mind supporting me because you didn't have the same dreams I did. But that was bullshit. That was me justifying taking advantage of your generosity and your love." The conversation lasted hours. There were tears, recriminations, and slowly, carefully, the beginning of actual honesty. For the first time in my adult life, my family was seeing me as a person with needs, dreams, and boundaries, instead of as a solution to their problems. But the most important realization came from me. I didn't need their validation anymore. The woman who'd sat in that restaurant demanding acknowledgement had evolved into someone who knew her worth regardless of their recognition. Their apologies mattered, but they weren't necessary for my healing. "I forgive you," I told them, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. I'm not your financial safety net anymore. I'm not the family problem solver. I'm your daughter and your sister, and if you want me in your lives, it has to be on those terms. The relationship we've built since then isn't perfect, but it's real. Mom asks about my work because she's genuinely interested, not because she's calculating my earning potential. Dad includes me in family decisions because he values my opinion, not because he needs my money. Michael and I talk about photography. His job has given him a new appreciation for the art form, and he listens when I share my own creative pursuits. Most importantly, they call just to check in, to share good news, to ask how I'm doing. Not because they need something, but because they want to connect. It took losing me as their ATM for them to find me as their family member. The house of cards that was our old dynamic had to collapse completely before we could build something authentic in its place. Michael learned that real success comes from effort, not entitlement. My parents learned that loving your children means seeing them as individuals, not just fulfillments of your own dreams and needs. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so fully and authentically that the people who undervalued you can finally see what they almost lost. Today, I'm planning a photography exhibition of my own, images from the travels I can finally afford, the life I'm finally living. Michael will be there, genuinely proud of his sister's work. Mom and Dad will be there too, bragging to anyone who'll listen about their daughter's artistic eye and business success. The golden child throne sits empty now, and I'm grateful it was never mine to claim. Being invisible taught me to see clearly. Being undervalued taught me my true worth. And being treated like an ATM taught me the difference between being used and being loved. The best revenge, it turns out, is living your truth, while the people who tried to diminish you learn to live with the consequences of their choices. And the sweetest justice is watching them grow into people capable of real love instead of convenient use.